So our first reader is the fantastic Anthony Anaxagorou. And Anthony is many different kinds of poet. He's an angry poet. He's a poet of memory. He's a poet of identity. He's a poet of who he is. But to me, what Anthony is a fantastic phrase maker. At the basis of so much poetry is the making of phrases. And Anthony, amazing phrases. A money bag sucking worry. What a great line. I'm afraid in a language that sounds like charred furniture being dragged across a copper floor. That's what we go to our poets for, isn't it? To give us these phrases that will actually resonate across the wider meanings of the poem. I've just been reading a book of criticism by the great prose critic James Wood, and the book is called Serious Noticing. And I think that's what Anthony does. He's a fantastic, serious noticer. So please welcome Anthony Anaxagorou.
After the Formalities. In 1481, the word race first appears in Jacques Debrez's poem, The Hunt. Debrez uses the word to distinguish between different groups of dogs. In that hard year, grandparents arrived on a boat with a war behind them and a set of dog leads, bullet holes in the sofa, burst pillows, split rabbits, passports bound in fresh newspapers, bomber planes, a dissenting priest, a money bag sucking worry. On the boat, grandmother anticipated England's winters with the others, slick snow on gold streets. Grandfather grieved 2 dogs he'd left, pedigrees, blue bottles decaying at the base of their bowls. The dogs of England were different. The water, though, fine to drink. In 1606, French diplomat Jean Nicot added the word race to the dictionary to denote distinctions between different groups of people. Nicotine is named after him. In London, grandparents lived with only a radio, a lamp favouring the wall's best side, Byzantine icons placed on paraffin heaters, arguing through whispers, not wanting to expose tongues, stories circulating, what neighbours do if they catch you saying, I'm afraid, in a language that sounds like charred furniture being dragged across a copper floor. Grandfather always blew smoke out the lip of his window. So too did his neighbour, colourless plumes merging, how it's impossible to discern the brand of cigarette a single pile of ash derives from. In his 1684 essay, A New Division of the Earth, French physician François Bernier became the first popular classifier to separate humans into races using phenotypic characteristics. Mother's skin is the colour of vacations, her hair barefoot black, an island's only runway, reports of racist attacks. Father turns up the volume, turns us down, chews his pork, stings the taste with beer, tells mother to pass the pepper, there is never a please. He asks if she remembers the attack, the hospital, his nose, a Coca-Cola bottle picked from his skull. Yes, she mutters. The chase, dirty bitch, how we'll make you white, Aphrodite hard, dirty dog, trembling with the street light. Please God, not tonight, the kids. In his essay of 1775 on the natural variety of mankind, J.F. Blumenbach claimed that it was environment which caused the variety in humans. In the bathroom mirror, I spat blood from my mouth, quaver breath, suburban. My brother, desperate to piss, pulled the door open, asking what happened. He tried to fight and lost. Why? Because the island we come from is smaller than this. Their names are shorter, pronounceable, so they exist. Even after their noses break, they still don't hook like ours. Their sun is only half peeled. He lifted his top to show me 2 bruises, to remind me of something. How history found its own way of surviving, a dark wash mixed with the whites spinning round and around. In the bathroom mirror, my brother spat blood from his mouth, Suvla breath, and home. Me, desperate to piss, pulling the door open, asking what happened. He tried to fight, and he lost. Why? Because the island we come from is larger than this. Here, we chew up too much of their language, leave behind an alphabet of bones. We will never exist in their love songs. How many bruises does it take to make a single body? I left him. Surviving history, a dark wash mixed with the white spinning round and around. In 1859, British naturalist Charles Darwin wrote, "On the origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life." If the house phone rings after midnight, someone you know is dying. Breathing in 10 black moons under a siren or belfry. From the wound in my uncle's back leaked the first atlas, blood escaping him like a phantom, vaulting over the spiked gates of heaven, the knife half still, half drunk, the motive skin or prayer. We went to visit. In the window's condensation, his daughter wrote, "Daddy, don't die," on the water of her breath. That evening, my father came home, one hand trumpet, the other reef, all his fists the law. In his seminal book of 1911, Hereditary in Relation to Eugenics, eugenicist Charles Davenport wrote, "Two imbecile parents, whether related or not, have only imbecile offspring." She had the same color hair as Jesus. Most boys smile after. When we were done, I moved the blonde streak from my arm, wondering how much of my body was still mine. I smelt of rain on an old umbrella, my fingers a burnt factory. She asked if she was my first, and when I said yes, she smiled, pulling the covers up, whispering not to get too comfortable, how her father would be back. The bed, a wet flag, the duvet, breaking news. On the shelf, a gollywog above her family portrait, poised like a saint. The Bengal famine of 1943 killed 4 million people. Churchill ordered food to be sent directly to British soldiers in Europe. On hearing the number of Bengalis who had perished, he asked, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" Outside the KFC, racists have always looked so sure to me, like weathermen. Driving his skull into mine like a belief, I saw how even evil can feel warm and smell good when close enough. A crowbar wedged against my throat. Slowly the lights began to wave, chips by my feet, black iron warming my skin so silently I could hear how suffering learns to soothe the jaws of antiquity. These men, irrational as any god, and me, emptying inside the promise of my oxygen tank. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad, literally mad as a nation, to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents who are, for the most part, the material of the future growth of the immigrant-descended population. Enoch Powell, 1968. After the formalities, of course I said London, and of course he asked again. When I said Cyprus, he leaned into his chair, recalling a family holiday. The weather sublime, the people accommodating, particularly towards the English, how it was a shame about the Turkish thing. And your parents, when did they enter here? In the late 50s, I replied. So before the Immigrants Act. Yes, I said, before. Well, good for them, he said, putting the lid on his pen, closing his pad, asking me to talk a bit more about my previous roles. In 2001, philosopher Robert Berlusconi wrote, "The construct of race was a way for white people to define those who they regarded as other." In those days, I was required to fill out forms with multiple boxes. Some I left blank. My father would notice my omission, filling in the white option with his black biro. I crossed it out, telling him I'm going with other. My mother, wearing the same sad skin as before, said, "We are not white." The look he gave her was, snatching the form from me, the same X dominating so much white. Let me tell you, nobody in their right mind need make themselves such an obvious target, he affirmed. It's amazing how ideas start out, isn't it? Nigel Farage, 2016. My grandmother will die somewhere in her skeleton, white-sheeted, iodoform thick, her mouth all beetle. My family will gather round her body, all fig. My mother will look for coins, despite there being nothing for money to save. Another lady, dying the same, will goad our kind. Through thick tubes she'll scorn. Her voice, a blue bottle's hot wings, you're all dogs, foreigners and dirty. Outnumber us even in dying. The nurse will apologize for the whole of history, drawing the curtain. Mud is always the last thing to be thrown. A prayer reaching for the pride of an olive, like a hint to hold.